What is going on, everybody? Thank you for tuning in yet again for another week of the Metal Blade Live Series podcast. I'm your host, Riley McShane of Allegion, and I am here with Jarvis Leatherby of Wow, Really a Lot. How you doing, man?
I, I'm busy.
Yeah, man, I don't doubt it. You more hands and more pies than anyone in this entire business, I swear to God. So, for those of you who are unaware of who Jarvis is and what he does and what he has done and what he's doing currently, we're going to go over all of that. But most prominently, he is in two bands, Nightdemon and Cirith Ungol. So, Nightdemon this year has been hitting it hard, man. Like really just releasing song after song, single after single. It's like you guys have done so many. From April 3rd, you had Empire's Fall. May 1st, it looks like you had Kill the Pain. June 5th, Are You Out There? That Thin Lizzy cover, and then July 3rd, Wisteria, and then another one on August 7th, In Trance, a live Germany cover featuring Uli John Roth. So
Yeah.
what has that been like doing, releasing all these singles? I know that a lot of people have kind of shifted, and we've talked about this in past episodes of this podcast, between the releasing albums versus releasing singles, and what the merits to both are, and why people are moving more towards releasing singles, while looking at the future music releases. So what are your thoughts on that topic?
Well, for us, it was something that we had planned 18 months prior to releasing even that first single in April. So, I mean, it was just an idea that we've had for quite a while. I'm a fan of old 7 inches. I mean, I love 7-inch vinyl. I mean, that's the thing too. I want to make clear that all this stuff came out on physicals. We're not, I know the CEO of Spotify had come out recently and said, "Hey, here the new business model is singles," and a lot of people in the metal community are disagreeing with that. And I can see that. I can see why. We've actually taken some heat from people too for releasing this many singles, because the full album is still very much alive in metal. And some people, I guess it's an honor, I guess people see us as one of the leaders in our subgenre, I suppose. And if Nightdemon's doing something, I guess it kind of sets a precedence for others, as we try and pioneer a lot of things. But really, it was just a creative thing for us. There was no other motivation behind it. We had written a collection of songs that didn't go well on a record together. They just weren't cohesive. And we recorded those songs on different parts around the world with different producers. We worked with Fleming Rasmussen, Matt Hyde, Steve Albini. I mean, we wanted to work with some of these bigger names that we had grown up loving, but instead of spending a bunch of dough and trying to get these guys to commit to us for, doing pre-production and then spending a month or two in the studio, all this, it's a tall order. So they were all real receptive when we were like, "Hey, can we come in there for a day and do something?" And they're like, "Yeah, that's awesome." Easy work for them. Right.
Totally.
So that was the main motivation behind it. But we got, okay, I guess we, it's a double-edged sword with the pandemic, right? I mean, we were supposed to be on tour at the beginning of April all the way through June.
Wow.
And we had 3 different tours lined up around the world. And what we were going to do is, as these singles were dropping, we were going to add that new song into the set as the tour was going along. We didn't do any pre-order. We never did any press announcement for any of the singles. So the first one dropped with no notice, and every 5 weeks we were doing one. People started to kind of pick up on a little bit of a pattern, but we never teased it. I mean, my goal was, the label had a bit of an issue with it at first, and I understand why. I mean, you want to have some kind of projected sales, but with the 7 inches, the vinyl was selling out each day that it went on sale. So it was really good. It made us look really good, like our plan had worked, But really, I mean, in today's society with such short attention spans, if you announce an album 90 days out, I mean, it's like, and then you're doing, what, like sometimes 2 or 3 singles leading up to it.
Mm-hmm.
It's so tough. It's like, it's an album, a new album that people are waiting for a few years could become old news within a few weeks.
Yeah,
right. Like,
absolutely.
And so I think that was our thing, on top of the songs, needing their own artwork, having their own, we did a video for each song. They had their own representation. They were each like a mini album to us. We got to do some cover songs on the B-sides of all of them. So that was really cool. The Uli Roth thing was something we did in Germany when he played with us on stage. And so we did a couple Scorpion songs, and that was cool to put that on wax.
That's right.
But really, so when I say it's a double-edged sword, our touring was taken away. But right when that happened, we released a single and that nobody expected, the first single. So at least for our fans, we had their full undivided attention during this entire campaign, because nobody's going to concerts, and a lot of releases, around the industry were just shelved because of it, because of production times, or because of like, the band wants to wait till they go out on tour to release something, which I understand too. But
right.
We had already had the idea to do this, and we already had our year planned as far as our whole release schedule. And so that's what happened. And, I just chalk it up to being a band that plans ahead all the time. We never wait around for somebody to ask us to go on tour, or for somebody to ask us to do a certain recording project. We kind of, we have our own idea about a year and a half out, and that's how we've always operated. So no matter what, things are in place, and we still have that plan for all of next year. But now, as far as gigs go, we're going to see, stuff keeps getting pushed back and back. But the thing for us is like, we already have first hold on those next things. So when things get pushed back and bands are looking to reschedule, we're already in the pocket and ready to go with the next thing booked. So we're not trying to reschedule anything that gets canceled. We're just moving on to the next thing we had planned.
Right. And that's super important, man. Like, I don't think a lot of people really understand the value of being that kind of proactive. Having things planned for yourself a year, 2 years, sometimes even further in advance, knowing your whole next album cycle while you're working on the current one.
Right.
And it's such a huge thing, like, especially for bands, in our genre, in the metal genre, and it's, sister genres as well, all these little subgenres. So it's like, knowing what you're going to be doing ahead of time, not only that, but then proactively achieving those things. And then in case something like this happens, I mean, obviously completely fucking unprecedented. This would never have happened in any other circumstances. But when something like this does happen, it's like you said, you can just kind of move on to the next thing, and, know that you're going to have other things coming down the pipe once, things get back to normal, and
right.
you kind of do that thing. My band has been doing the same thing, man. Just, taking every offer, just like booking tours, knowing that it's like, all right, yeah, we're booking this thing for next March, but that's not going to happen. You know what I mean? But like, just having it on the books, just in case, you know what I mean? Like, just in case something else unprecedented happens that puts things back on track. It's just so important to be prepared as, someone in the music industry, or really any industry. But it's funny. Absolutely. I wanted to touch back on something you said about the short attention span. And with a lot of consumers these days, especially of like media that's not quite as tangible or visual, you know what I mean, as something like music. Obviously a 7-inch is really tangible. It's like a physical product you actually get. But, the standard method of like, okay, well, we're gonna, release this album, announce it 3 months out, and then, release 2 or 3 singles leading up to it, and then do a tour to support it right after it comes out. Like that model's kind of going the way of the dinosaurs, man. Like, especially now with everything that's going on with touring off the table, and, bands still wanting to release stuff and be relevant, and still remain, in communication with their audience. It's trying to find a lot of new ways to do things. I use the term creative solutions a lot on this podcast, because that's really just what people have been having to come up with. But, applying that same method of thinking to release strategies, it really seems like the singles route is like just kind of becoming the new norm. You look at a band like Acacia Strain just recently did something like that for their last album, where they would release like 2 singles, or like a single a week, or something like that. It was a very like rapid fire release strategy, and just seeing how that played out and how well it did for them, I think kind of provides an example, because it's like people are, when you've done something one way for so long, it's really easy to adopt the like don't fix what's not broken, method of operation.
Yeah,
And
but that's
people
not growth.
yeah,
You know?
exactly, right? And people oftentimes get kind of scared. They like get a little bit timid when it comes to like trying new things and being like, "Oh, well, let's try this new release strategy and, see what happens when we release a bunch of singles and, still have, it's like we release 5 or 6 singles on a 12-track record instead of 2 or 3 singles off of a 10-track record and just kind of see what happens and see how it works." A lot of people don't want to take that risk because, obviously it's like our albums are big deals. They only come out, once every year or two.
Sure.
So a lot of people feel kind of, intimidated by that. But I've now that we've seen it work, I think that a lot more people are going to kind of shift towards that,
Yeah.
despite the complaints from, some people that aren't really ready to jump into that end of the pool.
Well, I mean, like, that's fine. That just leaves more room for us because I mean, I want to see all bands do good, but it's like, you talk about fear and it's like, that's something that I live with every day. Everything I do, I'm completely afraid of doing. And you mentioned the word risk, and that's how I live. It's all risk, all of it.
Absolutely.
But that's the only way to cross the threshold,
Yeah.
I mean, playing, nobody, nobody tells the story about the guy who played it safe. I mean, you have to go out there and try new things. I mean, even the standard business model was a new thing at one point, so evolution is it's going to happen whether you're participating or not. So it's up to you to be on board or get passed by. And, I think that everybody, especially now, it's like everything changes from day to day. There is no standard for anything anymore. So going out and experimenting and trying things, there's this old saying that I always go by, and it's basically, if it's not going to matter in 5 years, don't spend more than 5 minutes worrying about it.
Absolutely.
And that's the thing. And if you're putting out singles, like I'm not saying singles is the new way to do it, because actually it was the first way to do it. Like, before the LP existed, there were only singles. There were 45s. The LP was created to compile singles. So it's really an old way to do it. And if you're going to copy anybody, copy the fucking originators, right?
Absolutely.
So, but if you're going to put out singles, just make sure it's a great song. That's all I think, because that's what a single is supposed to be. That's your lead off track. Most people were making albums because the record company needed that, because they needed something to promote while the band was on tour. And, there's 80% of it's just filler anyway. So putting out 10 singles where 2 are good is not the new business. It should not be the new business model.
Absolutely.
If you write a good song, it deserves to be a single. If it's a throwaway song or a whatever song, then it's a B-side or it's a deep cut,
Yep.
So
absolutely. I completely agree. Definitely keeping quality in mind while
absolutely.
adapting, not just releasing shit for the sake of releasing it.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so moving on to a new topic. I know we've got a lot to cover in this particular podcast, but so Nightdemon, you guys also just launched a weekly podcast. And it's been going for, well, I shouldn't say just launched. It's like, 3 months old or so. It's free, although you do have like a subscriber tier program going on with it, where paid subscription, higher tiers get certain things, much like how Patreon works and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
With your exclusives. I have not seen a lot of metal bands do this with a podcast format. It's been going on for the past 4 or 5 years with just like fan club kind of thing. Like bands just have Patreons. Allegiant has a Patreon, all that kind of stuff. I guess, where did this idea come from to apply that structure to a podcast format?
To apply the subscriber structure to it?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, basically, there's only so much you can say in an hour a week, on a podcast. And their podcast the medium is audio, so you have no visuals. And Nightdemon has, our archives are vast. We have everything. I mean, we've saved everything from day one, from ticket stubs, original flyers, set lists, old merchandise, like new old stock stuff that's super rare and limited. I mean, even down to like strings and picks we've used at gigs. Just anything you could think of. Our subscriber site is insane. The bonus content, bootleg videos. We film and tape almost every show. We've done over 600 gigs in the last 4 years. There's just so much there. And you know, we wanted to put it out to the public for free, but at the same time, there is an extreme amount of work that we put into this. Our podcast is not like the band sitting around every Friday going, hey, it's Friday night, you know, like we're drinking beers. It's hosted and curated by somebody else. And it's a journalistic approach. I mean, every episode has tons of guests telling their commentary, and the whole thing is edited together like a story. It's like a documentary. And there's full on, you know, isolated tracks, demos. I mean, it's a deep dive into the whole history and the ethos of the band. And so the host, Chris Nesbitt, he did a podcast on Maiden. It was called the Talking Maiden Podcast. And I think they went for like about 140 straight weeks until they called it quits on that. And then, you know, I had wanted to do a podcast myself, just like your normal podcast where you just interview people. I just come across so many interesting people, and I thought, oh, that'd be cool, you know. But it's like there was nothing unique about that. And he brought up the idea of doing a Nightdemon podcast, and I was like, man, are you sure? Like, can we sustain something like that? But I mean, there's such an interesting story behind this band. We have so many, I mean, like very interesting things happen to us and with us and for us. And getting the cast of characters around the world involved to tell their story has made it really, really interesting. So it's a weekly podcast. It's like producing a weekly show. It happens every Friday, like clockwork, indefinitely. There's a lot of work that goes into it. So with the subscriber stuff, it's like, you know, our fans want to support us regardless, but we needed a platform to do that. So we didn't use Patreon or anything like that. We use no third-party companies because what, you know, in the past of us using these companies, it's like you build up this big following, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Patreon, whatever. And then these companies, all of a sudden they change their policies and you're screwed. And the you know, you can't pay that forward to the fans that are you can't do that. Like Patreon had a thing where they're like, oh, we realized we never charged tax, so we got to start doing that now, and it gets paid forward to the bands. And then the bands like that have this $1 tier subscription, now they're getting 27 cents a month. It's nothing.
Yeah.
And the fans think they're helping the band out, but with fees and just policies across the board on any third-party platform, you can't control it and you don't know what's going to happen. So we spent a lot of time building up our own platform through our own website that hosts everything, including the podcast. We still distribute it out to all the podcast mediums, all the third-party platforms, but we have a central hub where we control everything. So if those go by the wayside, you know, if Joe Rogan sues Spotify and they go bankrupt, like you can still see the podcast on our site. The subscriber site we control directly, and it happens on our site. And we curate it and we put a lot of work into it. So, you know, another thing is, and I'm not knocking anybody else's business model for this either, but what I've realized is that a lot of bands, especially that have subscriber sites, they don't follow up on it. They don't keep up on it, or they say they're going to do something and then it just slowly falls by the wayside, or they have these really high subscription tiers where they're promising all this stuff. And then when it comes time to fulfill it, they're like, man, we have to do this for 3 people, right? Yeah. And that's tough. That's a tough pill to swallow. But those people deserve it because they're paying you that money, right?
Absolutely.
So what we decided is we have one tier of fandom only. It's one price. It's one tier. It's like a Netflix subscription. And, you know, you can't raise the price once you start. So, like, that's what it is. And that's what it's going to be. And that's what we decided on. And we don't want to segregate our fans into different categories of, you know, who can afford what. It doesn't mean that they're a bigger fan than the guy that can only afford $1. So we've set it at one level. We're consistent with it. We put hours and hours and hours of effort into this every week. and it's a fucking Nightdemon playground. It's amazing the things that we've been able to do with it, and it just keeps growing and growing. And really the gift is for like any new subscriber, because all the back content is like, it just blows you away.
Absolutely.
Even in 10 or 11 weeks of doing the show, I mean, it is enormous, and it's cool for us to be able to have that live somewhere, you know. And it's kind of like, you know, you want to make a book one day, right? And like, you want to put all the stuff in there, but you can't put all the media in there. You just can't. So it's great to have a digital platform where we stream music behind our paywall. We stream videos. I mean, they're completely private, and it's just a cool thing. We really let the fans in, like, into the back door of the band, and we're very vulnerable, and we expose these kinds of things. And I think they really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Providing a human experience to fans, and like, you know, showing the fans, that's always been something that I've really valued when I see bands do it, and something that I've tried to do in my own bands as well. Is it's just like, we're all just people, you know what I mean? Like, we're all just out here, like, right there on the same little mortal plane that we all, you know, occupy, right? So it's just it's good to you know, dissolve those illusions, you know, tear down those walls of like, well, I'm the band guy and you're the fan, you know what I mean? Like, and it's always good to meet people on that human level. So that's super cool. Well, that sounds amazing, man. It sounds like you guys have a really, really promising thing, and the way you're approaching it is like right there, like super current with the way that you should be approaching something like that.
Right. Well, thank you. For us, we had to look at it and make a commitment. It wasn't an experiment. You know, we had to come out of the gate with everything ready to go. And we said, look, this is going to be a scalable business model for us. We're committing to this, and we're not going to divide our attention with other things. This is something that we're going to start, and it's going to grow. But we had to have everything set up first in order to do it. It wasn't like just putting one toe in the water. So we really had to think long and hard about this, you know. But again, you know, I'm not recommending that bands go out there and start doing podcasts on themselves. Again, this was a gift to us. You can't pay for this kind of stuff. You can't hire somebody to do a podcast. I mean, we have a true diehard fan doing this who has experience doing podcasts, and he's dedicated the time and the energy and the effort to it like a job, and he delivers week after week. So you if you're going to go out and do it, you really just want to be sure that it's something that you can continue and do. But I mean, of course, bands can do whatever they want. That's just my one piece of advice is just make sure if you're going to do anything like this or any kind of subscribership, you have to provide a value that's higher than what your fans are paying for. I know that sounds backwards, but that's really the way to do it. And that's the way to keep them engaged. And you have to have some regularity. That's why we roll every week. Every Friday is Nightdemon Day. You can't just skip or just infrequently do stuff. You can't build any momentum doing that.
Absolutely.
So
it's all about super serving. All about super serving. Well, speaking of weekly things, so on your personal Instagram, you've been doing this Metal Monday motivational type of deal for a couple months, and it's like little episodes about, you know, fitness and supplements and all that kind of stuff. How you kind of, you know, you've mentioned wanting to do like the Ironman challenge before the COVID epidemic hit and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know if many people who are fans already know this about you, that you're like super into that healthy lifestyle kind of shit. What kind of got you started on that? Have you always been like, you know, into health and fitness, or is that something that came about recently? Or
No, yeah. What got me started on that was, I guess, alcoholism, drug addiction, womanizing, you know, and seeing photos of myself just start looking more haggard over the years, like on stage, and just being like, you know, like I went through my Fat Elvis phase, you know, and I was just like, you know, you hear chatter in the background too. Like, hey man, is he okay?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. And I think, like in the middle of last year, I kind of started to switch gears a little bit. And then definitely at the beginning of this year, it was full on. And then I ended up in the hospital in March, I had some weird bacterial infection in my lung.
Oof.
It was just all this stuff. And I said, okay, now I'm really going hardcore. And so when the COVID thing hit, I just kind of thought, well, there's so much doom and gloom out here. Let's, at least if I could put out some positive message to the people, to my fans and my friends, this is what I got to do. And so there's nothing metal about the Metal Monday Motivational, except that the demographic are metalheads, right?
Except that you're a metal guy.
Yeah, right. Right. That may change in the future, but yeah, no. So I just wrapped the first season. It's 10 episodes. I'm doing like 10 episode seasons.
Right.
There's so much there that's not something that I wanted to continue every week, because it's just, there's so much there, and people really need time to digest some of this stuff. And a lot of people tell me that they go back and rewatch stuff, and some people fall by the wayside and they get back up again and do it. And that's what the point of the whole thing is. Like, you got to give yourself a break sometimes, but also discipline yourself. Discipline equals freedom and security. That's all it is. So if you feel better about yourself, that's what creates self-esteem, is doing the things. And so I'm just here just to teach what I've learned. And actually, see, this is a thing. A lot of motivational speakers or life coaches and stuff like this, they tell you about a lot of things, but they don't really do it. And so I actually make videos where I demonstrate myself doing these things, whether it's taking an ice bath, a cold shower, meditating, running, any kind of exercise, what have you. I'm actually demonstrating it and doing this, and it's great because I get feedback from the viewers, and I learn stuff from them all the time. They tell me stuff where not where I'm necessarily wrong, but it's like, hey, have you tried this? And then I start looking into it. I'm like, oh man, it's great. So it's a great back and forth conversation. One thing I've noticed though is, like, the whole like thing, or just viewership and stuff, like, it's not bad.
Yeah.
But I notice a lot less traction on the positivity. I think when there's negative messages out there, or it's time to bash somebody or cancel somebody out, everybody loves to get on that bandwagon. But when I'm out there talking about, mental health and being vulnerable and talking about my struggles and saying, hey, look, like, I'm out here in the public eye, and I'm opening up and telling you how you probably have this issue. I have it too. Let's talk about it. It's like people don't have the time.
It's totally one of those things, man, where it's like, negativity is like the dessert of social interaction. You know what I mean? Like, you can see a fucking cheesecake and then just eat the whole fucking thing and be like, oh my God, that was so good. I fucking enjoyed that so much. But then you feel like shit afterwards, right? Whereas it's like, like a nice, well-balanced diet. I'm going to do this for a while. It's like you said, it takes discipline. It takes that interest in self-preservation, which a lot of people just kind of don't have, or at least that's not why they're on the internet engaging in social media, out of the interest of self-preservation kind of thing. So it's definitely hard to broach those topics and get people interested in it, because it's just like, people just want to eat that cheesecake, man. They just want to fucking get down and dirty and, jump on as much negative stuff as they can. And it's tough, you know what I mean? Yeah. And we've all been susceptible to it. It's super easy to chime in and be like, haha, yeah, fuck that guy. Like, fucking, it's super easy, but it's like you said, much harder to approach things that broach on things that make you uncomfortable, or make you have to think about what your issues are and how you can work on yourself and all that kind of stuff. Right. A lot of people will deflect by being like, oh, I know I have all these issues, but look at that guy. At least I'm not that guy who's getting canceled right now. And then they'll, kind of expunge and do all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. But, I'm doing what I can to interject there with that. And there are people, I've noticed a lot of people have reached out to me, but the ones who haven't, I do see on social media, they're doing things, and I know where they're getting it from. And it's very gratifying to make a difference in somebody's life like that. Cause and so the first season I did was on the Iron 8, which is basically my morning routine, which is totally psycho and insane. But it's basically, 8 things that I do every morning before I can do anything. These like unconditional things for me that prime me and set me up for the day. And I see people, look, some people might just take one of those things, like a morning walk, and start doing that. but I see it consistently every day. And that's what really, that's kind of more important than actually people liking your music. I mean, really, I mean, like, I really just, like, you're actually changing somebody's life for the better. And that's so cool to be able to do that. So yeah, the second season will be coming up. I'm filming episodes starting in November. I'm thinking about putting it out in January, though, just for the first of the year to kind of get everybody going. But season 2 is going to be 10 episodes all on time management. And I'm using 10 different methods of time management. And so, again, this is like something that somebody can pick. I've tried all these, and I will be doing them each week with the viewers. So somebody's going to gravitate towards one of these things that's going to really help their lives and start doing the important things. And because one thing about time is we all have the same amount of time, you know, all the more successful people than us, they still have the same amount of time in the day as us. What are they doing to excel and still have a life? And that's what I'm diving into. And that's the knowledge that I'm going to share with everybody coming season 2.
Which is extremely valuable knowledge. Time management is definitely a skill that I'm always working on myself. But it's something that I, you know, especially since COVID hit, have had to just really buckle down. And because especially being like a touring musician, right? So much of your time is already spoken for and planned out throughout the year. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, I'm going to be gone for 6 months and I'm going to be touring and I know exactly what I'm going to be doing every single day. And all that time is spoken for. So now that a lot of people in our world have kind of been like, oh shit, I have all this time. I've noticed a lot of people trying to figure out what to do with it. Myself, you know, I started training martial arts again. I started getting back into my MMA and all that kind of stuff. I started a video game publishing company. I've been working with, you know, all 3 of my bands to you know, get albums pushed out, and then working with other projects to just like fill that time in the day, because you never really realize how much is there until none of it is spoken for. And all of a sudden it's just like, well, I could just fucking veg out and binge watch some shit all day. I mean, now that football season has started, I'm kind of back into that. I'm like, oh, well, no, I can't do shit on Sundays, guys. Sorry.
Yeah, it's weird, man. I've been a big sports fan for so long, but ever since this year started, like every time I watch a game, I get super depressed. And I'm like, this was a waste of my time. Like, honestly, like, I'm just like, I could have been doing so many other things. It's like, now I just watch the highlights once a day. It's kind of like same, like checking social media, you know. Yep. And time management is life management.
That feeling is so real. It is so real, dude. Yeah. Like so football and baseball are like my 2 big ones, right? And like my team, I live in San Diego. Like I've been a Padres fan my whole life, and this season, the one season in like years and years that they've been absolutely crushing it, like making it into the playoffs, like in a series with the Dodgers right now. Like, I don't give a shit. Like, I have not watched a single baseball game from front to back, because it's just like, especially a sport like that, like with football, it's a little bit, you know, the new season just started. It's still exciting, but I'm sure by Christmas time, I'm going to be right in the same boat where I'm just like, man, this is like 3 hours for each game, and I got shit to do, and you know, all that kind of stuff. And that's exactly how I feel when I start watching baseball this whole past season. I've just been like, man, like there are more important things to do right now than watch baseball. But for now, I'm trying to soak in that new season excitement and just be like, oh god, just let me have Sundays, for fuck's sake.
Well, yeah, I missed the Laker game last night. I mean, I'm a born and bred Lakers fan. It's in my family blood. Yeah, they're in the finals. Yeah, and I'm just kind of like, waiting for the closeout game. I'm just gonna watch that. You know? So
only watching playoffs, only watching closeouts. That's the way to do it.
That's it, dude. That's it. You know what? Like, it's like, I used to get so involved and so wrapped up into the NFL and the NBA, like, and you know, it just dawned on me. I would go through years of depression and just like, what difference does it make what other grown men do on a field or a basketball court? It makes no difference to my life whatsoever. You know, I'm trying to win my own World Series here in metal, you know? So like, I'm focused on that. I graduated from that. I still appreciate competition and I love the athleticism of it and I admire them. But the more and more I find out what my favorite players are doing, they're completely immersed in what they're doing, and it's teaching me to do the same for myself.
Absolutely. And there's a healthy level of obsession when it comes to sports that is equally met by an extremely unhealthy one. There's there's a lot of
I
people that
agree.
are just like walking stat books, and I'm just like, dude, do you have a job? Like, what do you do?
Yeah,
Like, it's crazy.
yeah. You
Uh,
gotta start living your own life, right? You
yeah.
know.
Well, let's move on to some other stuff. So I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, you are like a very busy man. You do lots and lots of stuff, and I wanted to touch on some of that. Before I keep you here for too long. So, in
Yep.
addition to playing in Nightdemon and Cirith Ungol, you also manage a few bands. So you're a back end industry guy as well. You manage Midnight, Satan, Visigoth, in addition to your own bands, Nightdemon and Cirith Ungol. What is it like managing your own band versus a band you're not in? Like, is there a difference? Do you take the same approach?
Yeah,
I
I do.
okay.
I
I
do.
I know
Yeah.
a lot of our listeners. I just want to clarify a few things because once we start getting into back end industry talk, it can get a little fuzzy for people who aren't quite as familiar with those things as we are. But managers basically are, I don't know, the role of a manager. Let's talk about that for a second, just to clarify
Mhm.
what managers really do for bands and artists, even outside of metal. So, for example, your process as a manager, if you had to do like a quick top down job description for a manager, what would you say it is?
Everything.
Yeah.
Like a booking agent books your concerts. You know,
hmm
a publicist, does publicity, spreads the word about what's happening with the band, and puts it out to their media outlets. And if it gets picked up, it does. If not, it's not their fault. A booking agent is a great job because you can, anytime a band plays, you collect a commission on that performance, no matter what. A manager's job is to just hold it all together. It's to be the leader, really. And it just depends on the dynamic of what kind of band you're talking about, because in bands there's multiple members, so you're having to deal with all those personalities. It's kind of like being the coach of a sports team. It's like, chemistry within a band or a sports team, it doesn't have to naturally be there. It can be created, but you have to be able to teach and coach and get people to work together. Sometimes it's better if they don't communicate together. It's better to communicate with somebody like me, where I can give them each their own individual attention and, understand who they are as people and work through it that way for the greater good of the team. And there's a lot of egos involved in sports and in music. And when you're talking about a team game, there's no room for egos. So you have to be able to feed into somebody's ego and have them feel like they're being appreciated, and that they're getting out there individually, but also you have to bring the team spirit together. But a lot of the responsibilities are everything from, I don't know, I have clients come to me about paying their own rent,
Yeah.
or their medical insurance, or their car insurance, or it's really down to everything. And when you're managing bands, there's no, the commission. You could do any sort of deal structure you want to do. I personally have never had a contract with any of my bands ever. It's kind of like, being in a band is the best benefit I could have as being a manager, because I know what these guys go through, because I go through it too.
Yep.
So it's like, I don't want to be locked into a deal with somebody. It's like, if we're done doing business, then we're done doing business. I don't want to have a prisoner on the other end or an unfair deal, because I wouldn't want the same for myself. Right. So, but with that said, I've never once been on the chopping block. My bands are my bands for life. We're like a family, and that's how we do it. And we're, it's daily conversations with people. But it's everything. You're dealing with everything. I mentioned publicists and agents, booking agents, like that. I'm the middleman between that. I'm dealing with them too. They just help out to do their specific job of it. Now, I've booked tours for some of my bands too, because there's certain things where it's like, bands are newer and an agent doesn't want to pick them up. So I've got to use my lifetime worth of contacts and call people and book European tours and say, look, hey, trust me on this one. You can trust me. I wouldn't send this to you if it sucked. You know, this is something that I'm working on. Go out on a limb for me, do a favor for me, and book this band. And I've had to use favors like that, but I would never do that unless I knew it was going to be something solid.
Right.
So in regards to managing my own band, I mean, look, it'd be nice to have somebody else do it, but a lot of big time managers out there, they just want such a big piece of the pie. And, you know, Nightdemon's 10 years into our career. Cirith Ungol is 50 years into their career. It's like, nobody's going to care about this more than me. They're just not. They're just not. If they were, they would have already been here, you know? And not to say that that can't happen in the future, but I just don't. I have my own infrastructure. I have a staff too. So it's like, I just don't see that happening. I don't. And anybody who's younger, who's looking to get into the game, it's like, they're just not on the level of us to handle it. And so I feel better just paying people to do a lot of the day-to-day work. Not to say I don't get my hands dirty. It happens every day.
Oh yeah.
But, you know, I'm in a unique position. I've been in the music business for a long ass time. And like, I know enough now from just failing so many times and learning from the mistakes that I've got my own infrastructure, and I like adding people to our team is what I like. And I know the major players out there, and some of them, if they haven't come to the table yet, like I mean, I'm just, why are they coming? Why are they coming to us? Because we've built something. That's the thing nowadays. There's not a lot of people that are hungry to go out and develop something. So people that approach us, it's usually because we've built something so strong that they want to pick that up and take the reins. And, you know, sometimes there is somebody that can step into the picture and go, hey, look, I'm going to get you things that you are not ever going to get yourself. I don't believe in never, but like right immediately, right? Like, hey, you know, I hold this weight and I can shift it right now. And just like I have friends that I can call for favors and say, look, I need this to happen. And they would do it for me because I've helped them and we trust each other. But I just don't see that as a reality right now with us. And I'm really not looking for that. I'm really not. I mean, if I told you the deals I have with my bands, you'd freak out because it's so fair for the bands because I'm in a band. And it's like, you know, when you know, most managers, or if you talk about managers and agencies, you're talking, if you have a big time manager and a big time agent, you're talking about probably 30% of your gross is coming off the top right away. So that leaves 70% of the money that comes in. Now you have expenses like touring expenses. The merchandise costs money to make, right?
Yep.
So you take out all your expenses, that's probably going to be 50%. So you're left with 20% to split among 5 guys.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's just like, but the managers and agents need to get paid for their job, especially if they're high-end professionals. They're not going to sit there and, you know, but I know the reality. And that's why most big time managers and agents have former clients. Okay.
Yep.
I don't. I mean, there's a couple bands that I dropped. I don't even like to use that word. There's a couple bands that I let go on their own because they were in a position where they were doing so much on their own that they didn't really need me. And that's good. But my door is always open for free advice. They're still my close friends. And I would rather not charge them money when they're still developing, but they're hands-on with their own merch. It's not like Cirith Ungol has been a band for 50 years. They need somebody to handle this stuff, you know, or Satan, you know? So you just have to be fair. I mean, you have to have integrity in this business. Your reputation is everything, and you have to do what's right. So my motivation is to make these bands so much money by doing the things that they want to do, that's how I get paid and that's how I get by. But I take a very, very, very small chunk of the pie. Right. But everything collectively adds up together. And there's things I've done 3 years ago that I'm getting paid for just now. But thank God I did that. And I planted that seed and I let it grow from a small, tiny plant into a big fucking oak tree. And like, you got to stay in it for the long game. You know, don't get into the music business because you want to be a millionaire. I mean, you can do it, but you have to know that you have to look at it basically forever.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's definitely an industry that you need to get into for the love, you know what I mean? For the love of the craft and what you're doing, especially with metal, you know what I mean? Like of all the pockets of the music industry, like, you know, I was just comparing even like mainstream artists, right? Like you look at a dude like Post Malone, who got into the game super early, super young guy, big like #1 chart topper every time he releases anything. This dude's been in the industry for 5 years and has made his net worth is like right around like 22 million dollars right now, which is insane. You know what I mean? Like that growth in the music industry is like, holy shit. Like he's like 22, 23 years old, super young guy, like got in super early and just capitalized and has made a shit ton of money. But the thing is that it's like if you compare that like apples and oranges to other industries like tech industries or the video game industry or high-end sports industries or politics or anything like that, making $22 million in 5 years as like an industry leader is not great in those other industries.
Oh no, you're not making the Forbes list. You're not making the Forbes list on that, dude.
So it's just crazy that it's like even the most successful people in the music industry by other industry standards are not doing very well. So it's definitely the kind of industry you have to get into for the love. You know what I mean? It's definitely the kind of thing that you just have to do it.
That's what bums me out about. That's what bums me out about going to former great music scenes like Austin, Texas, and San Francisco, California.
Mm-hmm.
Like, talk about just such a rich history of great music and culture. Both of those places that have now just been completely taken over by the tech industry.
Yep.
And it's just a bunch of fucking nerds walking around there, man, because the fucking artists can't afford to be there anymore.
No way.
It's just like, but that's what it is. It's just a bunch of fucking rich ass nerds. Yep. And they're getting younger and younger too. Yeah. I'm like, I'm creeping up on 40 years old I'm coming next year, and I'm looking at these like 21-year-old millionaires.
Yep.
And it's just like, yeah, whatever. Who gives a fuck? Like you fucking sat you sat in your house and fucking programmed a fucking.
Yep. No, it's crazy, man. And I lived in the Bay Area for 10 years almost, from 2007 to 2017, in Santa Cruz in the South Bay Area in California, which is, for those of you who are unfamiliar with the geography,
Santa Carla.
Yeah, Santa Carla from Lost Boys, exactly. Yep. Yeah. So, but those of you unfamiliar with the geography, Santa Cruz is about 80 miles south of like central San Francisco. That whole Bay Area scene, it's crazy, man, because it creates this invisible median of income, right? So it's like, because you have these people who are like college students or like have been living there for years and years and years, like since the 60s and 70s when the art scene was super massive there, and they're making anywhere from poverty level income to like $60,000-$70,000 a year. But then on the other side of the coin, you have like the Google and the Gateway and like all these big tech company like execs, or even not even execs. I mean, even like middle management people over there are making 7 figures a year. And so it creates this like I said, this invisible margin of median income, and then that's what the cost of living is set on. And it's like, well, based off the fact that this guy makes $10 million a year and then this guy makes $12,000 a year, the median income is now $200,000 a year, so that's what we're going to run the housing market by. And so you have this impossible cost of living coming out of those places like that, and it's just fucking crazy. And like you said, it's not cohesive to maintaining a good arts community.
No,
because artists can't afford that shit.
Same thing happened in downtown LA with all that gentrification. It's like artists were just moving into these old cool buildings because like nobody wanted to be there. They created a culture. Then the baby boomers, or or even a generation, the yuppie generation and all that before, like under them, they are like, okay, I'm tired of suburbia. My kids are out of the house. I want to go have some city living, and I want to go live downtown. And that drives the price up again. And like, you got to move the homeless, you got to move the artists, and then you got some people that have like rent control, and they're like, well, I've been here for 20 years, I'm staying. But then it's like, what am I surrounded by now? A bunch of bullshit, right? They don't, it's like, so I'm trying to be positive about this, but I'm bringing up, you got a good point. And there is a lot of invisible income out there, and it's just, this stuff lives in the cloud. The money's not even real. It's not even cash. It's just digital numbers.
Yep.
So, but hey, whatever. One of those tech nerds wants to meet me down a dark alley. I don't care how much fucking money he's got. He's got another thing coming. So
I'm taking it. Well, okay. So let's go on to something else that you do, one of your other very many hats. So we had a question from one of the fans that coordinates with one of the questions that I have here about the festival that you do, Frost and Fire. So the question that we had from the fan was, hey Jarvis, I know you're the person behind the Frost and Fire Fest. With the current COVID-19 pandemic, how do you think this will affect the future? I'm sorry, how do you think this will affect how future fests like yours, Hell's Heroes, Legions of Metal, etc. are booked? It's coming from Matt Rodriguez. And then to follow that up, the question that I have is pretty similar. It's, as a festival organizer and someone who spends a lot of time on the road, how have you been coping with it in 2020? Dealing with everything, just the current climate, current atmosphere, the question everybody's been getting for the past 6 months.
Sure. Okay. So this, I may give a controversial answer here. First to answer Matt's question, I know Matt Rodriguez. He's a great supporter. He's out there in San Antonio, Texas, and that's great history of metal there.
Oh yeah.
But I could say, I guess we were fortunate because we took a year off this year anyway. So from the festival, because we had so much happening with Nightdemon, like we just couldn't be there to do it. So I guess it's another thing about Nightdemon making plans 18 months ahead of time that, like, hey, you never know. We're ready for a pandemic. We're ready for it. We're ready for this stuff. In some form, we have things in place. Frost and Fires has always been in Ventura, California, the first weekend of October. It's really it's the biggest traditional metal festival on the West Coast. We expanded to London. We're doing additions there. And we had Ireland booked for 2022. We're calling it Frost and Fireland, but that is now canceled. So we never announced that. And then every Halloween, we do one in Hamburg, Germany. It's called Heavy Hamburg Halloween. So our edition was canceled this year. So part 3 will be happening 2021. We will announce that lineup on October 30th this year. We will announce that, and it will go on sale. So we hope a year from now that concerts will happen. And also, I'm not going to speak for Hell's Heroes. He asked about Hell's Heroes, and I'm not going to speak for Legions of Hell's Heroes. Happens in Houston every year by our good friend Christian Larson from the bands Night Cobra and Necrofire. And Legions of Metal is formerly called Ragnarok. It happens in Chicago every year in May at Reggie's. And that's curated by Bob Byrne and Shane Merrill over there at Reggie's. Those are our big traditional metal festivals that we have in the States. Only 3. Oh, I want to give a shout out to Northwest Metal Fest. They've got some stuff going on too up there in Seattle. But really, that's all we have here for what we're doing. We're the last true believers in line for this thing. I don't know what's going to happen in the future. I know that my bands will be out there playing with whatever form that takes. I mean, if we've got to do some kind of social distancing thing, I'm fine with it. We usually book big venues that aren't sold out anyway. I mean, we still draw hundreds of people or 1,000 plus. But I mean, hey, look, if we got to do some outdoor event, okay, that's fine. But if you look around in the world today, the social distancing thing doesn't work, okay? Like, people say they try and do it, but I go to the beach every weekend. I see what's going on. Nobody's wearing a mask. There's no social distancing. You wear a mask to get into a restaurant and then you take it off. I don't understand the whole, it's really just creating a lot of problems for people, and it's making a lot of things. I mean, in my opinion, it's like we do it or we don't. I say full lockdown, or people just use your best judgment. And if you're not comfortable going out and doing something, you don't have to do that. But that's why we pay taxes, and that's why we live in a free society. So I think it's going to be up to the people pretty soon to decide. The problem is that the conversation has divided so many people, and I try and take that with a grain of salt, but there's so many preachy motherfuckers out there telling people what to do. And it's like, you know what? Just do your own fucking thing. Stop telling everybody what to do. We've gone through this long enough. There's been so much back and forth. Oh, we're back. Oh, we're not. Oh, we're back. In Europe, they're starting to schedule things. Hey, bars are going to start closing again on Monday the 15th. Like, you're scheduling this shit. Like, in the UK, they're doing that. It's like, is this happening or not? Is this
Yeah.
a concern or is it not? For me, it's you never want to be the asshole that gets "I told you so" later on and is responsible for people getting sick and dying. So I'm not about that, but personally, I'm ready to rock. I'm not telling anybody if nobody wants to come to my shows, that's fine. They don't have to, but I need to play again, and
Yeah.
I'm willing to take the risk, and I'm keeping myself as healthy as possible to not get sick from anything. I've rarely gotten the flu. When I haven't died from it. I've never gotten a flu shot. Many people have not. This is a virus that, I don't think a vaccine is going to fix shit. I think that a vaccine to vaccinate the world is going to take years, and we still don't have a vaccine, people. So that's the thing. And I have no interest in getting it myself. I'm not saying that people shouldn't if they don't want to. It's just, I don't know what's in there. I don't know. You don't know what's in there. And if the government can write me something certified that says, if I get sick from this, that they're responsible for financial damages, then I'll take that risk. But there's another thing. There's another concern too. Like, hopefully countries won't require a vaccine to get in. I mean, we've played in like Honduras, El Salvador, really rough places, and they've required, yellow fever vaccines that we've had to get. But if countries are going to require that for entry, we may be a band that says, okay, we're not playing there again. And it's going to take people, it's going to take the citizens of the world to quote Dr. No, it's going to take the citizens of the world to stand up for what they believe in and say, you can't force me to do anything. And I'll tell you what, if society splits in two between the paranoid and the people that are not, don't worry, people. The other society that will stand up for what they believe in. We'll have internet. We'll have things like this. We're not going to be living underground, okay?
Yeah.
But you can never. I think the misstep here is let's learn the lesson that we can never rely on our governments to take care of us. They don't care about us. They don't give a shit about us. And it's like, why do you think guys like us aren't in government? Like, we'd probably be pretty good at it, but it's just such a shitty job. You got to look at the people who are taking these jobs. Okay. We cannot rely on them. If the majority decides what they want, we can have it. They can't do anything about it. I mean, look, we've almost single-handedly shut down the goddamn police department nationwide. It's crazy. I mean, we do have a voice, and I'm not saying violence is the key or rioting. I mean, there's a place for that too, I suppose. I'm not judging, but I'm on the verge of just starting to throw concerts, man, and just tell people, look, if you feel safe wearing a mask, by all means do it. If you don't feel safe coming here, you don't have to come here.
Right.
So again, I think this may be some unpopular opinion and people don't want to hear it, and people may judge me, but hey, they would judge me my whole career,
Right.
So
see, I'm kind of the mind where it's like, I think a lot of people are right there with you. I think a lot of people are ready to get back on the road. A lot of people are ready to play shows, but there is that, there's so much red tape right now, like in so many different places and in so many different ways. And I'm personally of the mind that I think that it's like, it's gonna take a united front, and it's gonna take. Yep. I've always been the type of person who I'm like, the best way to handle something is systematically with proper planning. You know what I mean? It's just one of those things that it's like, if you plan something well enough, and if you look at every possible angle and you approach things from a systematic way, you can make things work in tough situations. And with this whole thing, with everybody just ready to get back on the road, ready to get back to attending shows, you know what I mean? I think that it's really going to take everybody being on the same page, because it's like you said, there's, we live in a free society, but the thing about that is that everyone's definition of freedom is completely fucking different. And you have all these individualistic mindsets, all these very idealistic kind of people running around, that, this is what this means to me, and this is what this means to me. And so it makes it difficult to do something in a unified fashion. And for the revival of the touring industry, my personal opinion is that we need to have that united front as an industry to come back strong, so that we don't have the here again gone again kind of thing, back and forth, always and forever until this gets fixed. The vaccine thing is a whole other subject I don't really want to get into, but
right. No,
it's
yeah, we don't need to get into that. But
yeah, but I think that definitely having a united front as an industry is really what it's going to take to get everything back to normal for keeps. So I'm right there with you with the getting...
but we need somebody to start that.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
it's not gonna happen. It hasn't happened with petitions, and if we don't do it soon, there's gonna be no place to play, because all these places are going out of business, and more so than the supposed death rate of this virus. With I mean, I've seen people with stage 4 cancer have COVID on their death. I mean, I'm not saying it's not a contributor, but I'm saying the suicide rate from the fallout of this economy is going to be something else, or the depression that we're going to be headed for. Let's weigh what's really important here. I mean, I'm not saying lives don't matter. They do matter, but let's take those people that are concerned about that. Do what you got to do. There's no judgment there, but there's pretty soon there's going to be no industry, and it takes a leader to start. And that's what I think needs to happen. And, I'm all about the unified front for sure, but like somebody needs to lead that charge. It's Absolutely. Like it's not gonna happen collectively. It's just not.
No way.
Like
no way.
It's like so. But yeah, we don't need to talk about the vaccine. All I'm saying is that the one last thing on that. Many people are waiting to that. Many people think that's the answer, and they're waiting for it. And so if they're waiting for it, they might as well just shift into something else in life, because you're gonna be waiting for a long time.
Yeah, gonna be waiting for a long time. I think that's a big policy side of things, like touring in other countries, doing all that kind of stuff. Like you said, I think that vaccines and having something as like a security blanket in terms of policy is that's what's gonna take. But
right.
But yeah, anyway, moving on.
Damn, I didn't want to do that on this. Okay.
Yeah, I feel you on that. So I just have a couple other questions here for you. Before I let you go. We've been at it for a little over an hour now, but I'm sure tons of people are curious. Like you said, Cirith Ungol is like a 50-year-old band, been at it for a long time. You joined, relatively recently in 2016. What has it been like being a part of an established, like, legendary band like that, and being part of a long-awaited comeback record, which is going to, 2020's Forever Black, the first Cirith Ungol album in 29 years.
Right. Well, for Cirith Ungol, I mean, they were kind of, Nightdemon and Cirith Ungol were really the only two metal bands to ever come out of Ventura, California. So they've been a part of our local history for a long time, and I've been friends with the guys. It was like a lot of Nightdemon kind of took off overseas, and those guys saw what was happening, and they really thought that now was the chance. So after 25 years of not being a band, I mean, that's kind of when we got it going. But I mean, being the manager of the band and kind of like the driving force on the business end, I don't know. I'm not really like wooed by it, and I'm the bass player kind of by default. We couldn't get the original bass player to do it, and I enjoy doing it, especially since, if I'm directing traffic on stage, it's nice to be the guy on stage, not the manager on the side of the stage, like, hey, like, right? So I have a lot more live experience than those guys, a lot more on-stage experience. I mean, they've been at it for much longer than me, but I've done more shows, and I play more often. But I mean, it's just so hard to say, because I'm in the thick of it. I think that, I mean, it's one of the greatest accomplishments of my life, getting the band back together, because they said they would never reunite, and many have tried, and many have thrown a lot of money at the band to do so. So it was a challenge for me. People told me that that I could never do it, and so I made sure that I made that happen. But I think years from now, looking back on it, I think I'll look at it with a different lens. But as far as the comeback record, I mean, it was something that the band wanted to do since reuniting in 2016, and I've kind of I'll take the responsibility that I kind of put the brakes on that for a few years, because it's something that I didn't want to see happen, because traditionally you don't have great records from bands that have not played together for 25 years. I mean, you just don't. And the legacy was so good and so intact. They weren't a band that had many records. They had 4 albums, and they're classics. And that's a solid legacy. And that's my job, is to put my personal feelings aside. My job as a manager is to protect the legacy that they laid down. So that's my job. It's not about personal feelings. It's about that. It's to preserve that and to keep that forever. So it took a long time to get those songs together, but when I knew that they were solid and they were ready to go, I had no problem doing the album, and the reviews speak for themselves. So
Absolutely.
Yep.
Well, that's awesome, man. So before I let you go, one last question. Tomorrow, pretty much same time, same place. You're going to be doing a Metal Blade and Cirith Ungol Throwback Thursday live stream with back-to-back Cirith Ungol videos. What can fans expect from the stream? What videos will be streaming? Why did you choose these videos? You know, what's some of your personal favorite Cirith Ungol videos, you know, of all time, as a fan, as someone who's there in the band now? Just give us a little bit of insight on that.
Yeah, so tomorrow we'll be streaming the entire concert from our live album I'm Alive that came out last year, which is the second show that the band ever did in Europe, in Athens, Greece, at the Up the Hammers Festival. So that's cool. We've got a multi-angle pro shop video. We're going to show that whole concert. And then we also had a documentary film in the box set version of I'm Alive, which it's extremely long. So what we're going to show is part 4, which is called The Lost Years. And it's kind of just a little collage of interviews that we did for that documentary that kind of just fill in the gaps on a lot of things. And I think that's pretty cool for the fans to check out. And I think Robert Garvin, the drummer, and myself, I'll be there on Facebook, you know, just chatting with the fans. So if you guys want to comment on, hey, you guys suck live or whatever, you know, I'll be like, yeah, you know, I was a little wasted at that show or whatever. Yeah, but that's kind of cool. As far as favorite videos of the band, yeah, actually, there's a video that nobody's ever seen. The band has never ever done a music video ever. We were gonna do one for Forever Black, which we still plan on doing with David Brodsky, but the pandemic hit, so he wasn't able to fly out and do that with us. But there's a video for the song "Join the Legion" in the early '90s that was never released. And Jimmy, our guitar player, he couldn't make the video shoot for some reason, and so there's some other guy playing guitar who the band still doesn't know who he is or what his name is. We just call him Fake Jimmy, but someday we'll release that. It's a really crazy video, but we still don't know who this guy is, and we're trying to track him down. Nobody can remember his name or anything, and he doesn't even know the song. It's pretty classic.
Maybe releasing it will have him come out of the woodworks. He'll be like, oh shit,
yeah,
that's
right.
me. I did.
yeah, the lawsuit paperwork that'll show up at my office will be
figure out who this guy is.
Now we have a name to the face, right?
Well, dude, thank you so much. You know, for those of you who have been following the progress of this Metal Blade live series and the podcast that came before it, we had Jarvis on before, and that was equally awesome. It's always super inspiring talking to you, man. You know, seeing how hard you hustle and how busy you stay. You know, despite all things, always a pleasure having you around, man. And thank you so much for giving us some of your insight and chatting it up with us today.
Yeah, Riley, thanks a lot for having me on. I appreciate it. I hope people are out there are interested in some of this shit and at least inspired. You know, I just think everybody, this is a golden time for us right now. It's not as bad as people think it is. Really, this is a time for everybody to reset. Okay, just hit the hard reset button on your life and just do the things that are important to you. Don't worry about what the fuck is going on around you, things that you cannot control. You know, the presidency, I mean, yes, it's a big deal, but it doesn't affect you as much as you think other things do. Worry about what's happening next door with your neighbor. Get involved in local politics and the things that you can actually control, and start making a change on the levels that you can actually make a difference on. And if we all do that, that's the stuff that spreads to the top. Okay.
Absolutely.
So just really focus on what's around you. Take care of the people that surround you immediately, and make sure that they know that you're there for them, and your life will be good. Turn the fucking news off.
Hell yeah. Very well said. Well, for those of you who enjoyed this podcast, like I said, Jarvis will be back tomorrow on the Metal Blade channel and the Cirith Ungol channel to go over some of that live stream stuff. Until then, thank you guys for watching. This is the Metal Blade Live series. I'm your host, Riley McShane of Legion. This is Jarvis Leatherby. Follow him and Cirith Ungol and Nightdemon down below with all that social media stuff, and we will see
you guys
next week.
Cheers. Thanks.